Hello and welcome to the podcast for Real Life Heroines with Susanna Liller. Join us bi-weekly as alongside of you, we work toward answering the call, knowing that stepping into our destiny always involves going into the unknown and exploring new landscapes. This show talks about those new landscapes, what it took to get there, and the real challenges that take place for most of us along the journey. Heroines don't stay in their comfort zone. They follow their inner guidance to grow and evolve. From the School for Real Life Heroines, your host, Susanna Liller.
Super.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to my podcast for Real Life Heroines, where I get the best job ever to interview women on their heroine's journey about how they might have accepted a call. Well, all of them have accepted a call to do something that takes them out of their ordinary life and usually expands them, stretches them into something bigger. And today, my guest is Amanda Painter. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Susanna. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so great to have you here. And let me read about Amanda. Let me read the bio for all of you, because Amanda, you have to make sure that I remember that I ask you as an astrologer to talk a little bit about this year before we end, because yesterday when I was talking with you, I got so involved in your story because I love your story that I forgot to talk about it. So don't let me forget.
Okay.
Okay, so here's who you are. And I'm reading the whole thing because I love the whole thing. So you're going to, all the details. Amanda Painter is an astrologer, healer, actor, editor, and writer, currently living in Saco, Maine. She has over a decade of experience writing about astrology for a global online audience and of exploring various forms of somatic work, breath work, energy healing with her own spiritual counselor and mentor, Elisa Novick. Amanda has been practicing the technique she uses to guide the spiritual inquiry sessions that she offers and to connect with old soul level trees. And just as an aside, I got so interested in this talking with Amanda that I booked a session, one of these spiritual counseling sessions with her. So I can't wait to do that with you, Amanda.
Yeah.
And so Amanda holds a BA in English and theater from Clark University and an MA in literature from Boston University, which inform her ability to see the narrative told by the planetary players in an astrology chart. And I guess I also, as an aside, one of the first things that drew me to Amanda was her writing, how she writes about it. So, and to tease out the themes of a client's experience. When not working, Amanda loves to travel, swim, dance, garden, hike, perform live theater. And I think you just got some sort of a gig, right?
Yes, I just booked a local commercial, which is always fun.
Great. Are you allowed to tell us what it's about?
I mean, it's a upscale like kitchen and bathroom fixture company.
Nice. Okay. All right. And capture incredible light. This is what she also does in photographs. So thank you. What a rich life, what a full bio. But we're going to talk, as you know, this is what this show is about, Amanda's heroine's journey. And she and I talked about, well, where do you begin? Because you could begin back when you're in kindergarten, but we thought, and you can change this at any time, Amanda, we thought we would begin where you were working for this global astrology company and beginning to feel like, this isn't, and then you begin to have conversations with someone in a local sandwich shop. So can you say more about that?
Yeah, so I was working for 10 years for this particular online astrology website. It's something I'd gotten into just by reading this person's horoscopes that had very much helped me in a difficult time of my life, and struck up a conversation. And in making a friendship with this person, he said, "You really should be doing more with your talents and your intelligence," and invited me to work for his company. And so I learned astrology on the job, and learned writing about astrology on the job, very organic sort of process. Um, but excuse me, well, froggy this morning.
You want to get a drink of water? I've got mine right here. So yeah, I'll do it too.
So it had always been an interesting job, and at times wonderful, and at times very difficult. Um, but during the last year or two of this job, I'd noticed the sense that it might be coming to be time to move on. And I'd struck up, as he said, a friendship with this young man, about 19, 20 years old, in my local market. We just have conversations about life and interesting things. And he'd start asking me questions about, well, how do you know how to do this? Or how do you get more creativity into your life? Or how do you deal with this kind of stress? Or questions along those lines. And we get deeper and deeper into conversation. And in the process, I started to realize, like, I was really enjoying being in this role with this person. I think I'd spent a lot of my young adulthood feeling very lost, not sure who I was or what I wanted to do, and looking for other people to answer these questions for me. And hadn't really thought of myself until that point as someone who might have the life experience and some wisdom to offer. I'd been offered at times during my writing for the astrology website to start doing readings, and I'd always shied away from it. And here I was starting to really enjoy and feeling comfortable in this role of some sort of informal counselor, coach, mentor to someone.
What I loved is you said to me, I realized I have something to say. So there you were with the person who globally had the thing to say, supporting them. And all of a sudden, I have something to say. And I just want to point out to people, and Amanda, you correct me, but I think that's where your call began, that you, with this person sort of being so interested in you. And I just want to point that out, that calls aren't always some big, huge, dinging bell, but here was a conversation in the local market.
Yeah, over the course of months, it was very organic. It took me kind of by surprise to realize that I was suddenly in this different dynamic with someone and feeling comfortable in it. And certain things were going on at work that had me wondering how much longer I might stay. And I started to realize that this kind of work was calling me forward, and it was getting to be time to probably leave the company. And my partner and I went to had a major trip, 2-week trip to Bali in November of 2019. And I remember coming back from that trip and realizing, oh, this is it. I need to leave this place. It's time. And looking at some upcoming astrology in early 2020 and reading some horoscopes that were written by my employer, and realizing, yeah, I need to catch this energy wave that's coming up in early winter 2020, January, February, and eventually, gave my notice and put that into motion. And then, a month later, after I left in mid-February, a month later, everything shut down, and I just kind of had to surrender to going with the flow.
Right. And so it took time for you to get clarity around, I need to leave. About how long was that?
I don't remember how many months it was building up before the trip. I knew it was percolating, that there's a sense of, like, I know I'm building toward leaving, and I knew I felt like I could trust this better because it felt very grounded. It felt very much like a kind of subtle draw forward, whereas in the past I'd had, the company or my employer would be in some sort of crisis, and it would feel very triggery, and I'd think, I can't do this anymore. But then I'd think, I'm not ready to leave. I don't know what to do. And I'd pull back away from that cliff. And this just felt different. It felt much quieter, but also more solid.
Yeah.
And then it was coming back, like I said, it was coming back from the trip and entering into a certain workplace situation. I realized, I'm done with this. It's time.
Not me.
As soon as we get through this year ahead project that company would do at the end of the year, I said, I'm giving my notice. And I think it was like the day of New Year's Eve, I realized I had to talk to my boss and gave him a call and said, it was very emotional. It was very difficult after 10 years of a very complicated work relationship with this person. And just had to make it happen. And after that, like after everything shut down, after the initial disorientation and depression of having no job and no theater to do because that all shut down in the same week, like in 1 week, everything I was doing and everybody I knew locally, everything shut down. It was really intense. And I could tell that I was picking up on not just my own sense of depression and disorientation, but I think everybody in my community. It was just so palpable. But once that got underway, I like I said, I just kind of started to go with the flow. I engaged my spiritual counselor, Elisa, to take a video class she was offering to learn some of her techniques, and I dove into that. As I mentioned to you when we talked before, I actually went a full 8 or 10 months during 2020 without even looking at astrology, thinking about astrology. There were a couple times I checked to see what sign the moon was in when something happened that made me think, oh, I wonder if the moon's in Aries or whatever.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, after 10 years of totally immersed in it. And then, no, you didn't even want to check in. So again, you were in a transition period, and the pandemic really kind of accentuated that so greatly because everything's shutting down. So you were like out there blowing in the wind, but you embraced it because you said you went with the flow.
I did, yeah, and I'd intended to give myself a good 2 or 3 months after that job to kind of disentangle before jumping into something new. I didn't expect it to end up being as many months as it was, but it really, I think, afforded me the sense of feeling like I was kind of in the same boat with everybody because so many people weren't working. It took away from me a lot of the stigma or the pressure to get something going. I'd done my due diligence and built up my savings for this eventuality because I'd known for a few years that I was going to want to leave at some point. And my financial advisor said, well, I'd feel more comfortable with that if you built up X amount of dollars. I said, okay. And I got to work doing that. And when a time came, there was this odd sense of support, even as the world was reeling from the COVID pandemic. And I was able to dive into this new set of studies with my spiritual mentor. And as I said, just allow myself to go with the flow using other tools and trusting my inner voice in a new way rather than checking the astrology all the time. And that allowed me to start to kind of untangle what astrology was for me from that job and that person who I'd worked for 10 years and allow that to kind of dissolve a little bit and release. And when I came back to astrology, it really was with this newfound interest and curiosity. I found myself reading books that I'd been given about astrology that I'd never had any interest in opening. I was just like, oh God, another astrology book that he's given me. And all of a sudden I was really, really interested and engaged with that process of reading these books and learning in a new way.
So you had to make it your own.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize I was doing that until I kind of got through a few months of it. I realized, oh, okay. That's what I was doing. I needed to step away from it, come to it with fresh eyes and a fresh heart, and find my new way into it on my own. Yeah.
That is such another good point, because really you don't even see your journey until you get far down the road and you can look back and I think it was that guy in the market, and you don't realize it. But here's a question that everybody has to run into. So what we call the threshold guardians. So there you decide to do something and you're doing it. And the threshold guardians are all those inner and outer critics that are going, you are crazy. You need to get a real job. Da, 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 da. Did you encounter threshold guardians in this big journey of yours?
In this phase of it, not too much, but I think that's partly because I was really selective. Now that I think about it, I was very selective about who I talked to about what I might be growing and trying to incubate. Even some people who I knew would be supportive, I might only say, I'm incubating something. I'm moving towards something new. I don't know when I'll be releasing it fully formed, but yeah, I was pretty careful about that. And I think, my mom had some concern about like, oh, you're not working. I said, well, I've got my savings and I'm getting some pandemic assistance. And, my partner had some of the same concerns, but also he understood how intense that job had been and how much I very much needed to release from that in my own way. And he would remark like, you are so much more relaxed and stressed and unstressed and happy. He said, everybody I'm meeting at work, 'cause he's a primary care physician, he said, everybody's so anxious and depressed except for these one or two introverts I'll come across who are just like, yeah, I'm having a great time just being. And that was partly the zone I was in, that it was kind of a relief to not have the obligations, even though I missed a lot of the social stuff that I used to do.
Mm.
um, that I was able to focus on this. And I definitely struggled still with some lack of structure in my days, and that kind of thing. But overall, I think the threshold guardians tended to occur more internally.
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
it came to the question of how do I make the step of like trying this on someone, some of the tools I was learning in my video course that I was taking, um, and asking people, can I try this? Is that, ugh? And, wondering, like, how do you know when you're ready to launch a business and offer this for money? And, um, like traded a little editing time with a coach who, he wasn't overall a good fit for me. And I didn't end up being a good fit for him with the editing, but we tried each other out and he did at least help me to conceptualize the idea that I get to decide when I'm ready.
Right. Right.
And that we don't have to necessarily do a million years of free practice sessions. That you can do a few and start to learn as you go. So that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever like come to the realization, oh my gosh, I have been doing particularly the astrology for so long. Of course I can do it. But you can get into a pattern where you're thinking, no, only he can do it, and you have to accept that I've been doing it. This is what I know. Yeah.
I mean, took some time, and I think I still have moments of that because, writing a generalized astrology, weather forecast for the week is really pretty different from speaking to someone about their life.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the fear came for me initially and in years past, was that I can write generally, and as long as I'm very careful about how I phrase things and offer cautions when they're warranted, but don't get doom and gloom, everybody's going to bring their lives to it. They'll take from it what they need. They'll resonate with it or they won't. The situation of speaking directly with someone about their personal life is precious, and it's an honor and a privilege to be allowed into someone's life in that way. Um, and so I never wanted to take that lightly, but also didn't want to beat up on myself to the point that I never tried it. um, so yeah,
Right.
I think like 4 practice sessions for friends and took some feedback and thought, okay, that's going well enough. I'm learning. You get faster as you go, you get more efficient, etc.
Mm.
But somewhere along the line, I think it must have been November, October, somewhere in the fall of 2020, I remember going hiking with my partner and talking about like how I realized that the sort of the vision for what I thought I wanted to do wasn't just I want to do astrology. That astrology was really just one piece of the puzzle or one tool in the toolkit that I felt like I wanted to offer. Because I really love, like I said, this work I've been learning to do and offer through Elisa, which is fascinating and wonderful. Facets of Barbara Scher's life coaching work. I think she has some wonderful approaches to help people get unstuck and discover what they want to do. Things I've learned through voice and breath classes with Kristen Linklater, that are very somatic based and really about awareness, inner awareness, and releasing and allowing your true voice through and your true self through and letting that expression come out. And also things I've learned through theater, things I've learned through contact improv dance. So there are a lot of things that I felt like I want to pull from in hopefully offering ongoing sessions with people. And I realized that I still don't have that full picture constellated. They're not all gelling yet, but I have astrology and I have the spiritual inquiry. And so I decided to start offering those, kind of try to get those wheels on the bus turning at similar speeds, and then build from that as things grow. And as I mentioned, in fall of 2020, I was hiking with my partner and said, how do I know when to start and how do I launch and when? And he said, I think you have to decide when you're going to launch. Like no one's going to tell you, okay, you're ready now. I said, oh, I thought about that a while, and I realized that the spring equinox of 2021 made to me a logical starting point, because it is the start of the astrological year. Aries is a sign of I am. It's the initiating action sign. Thought, well, I got to catch that energy. And that was like at least 4 months away, about 6 months away, whatever it was. And I thought I can do that. And lo and behold, the fall and the winter crept, and I found myself just a few short weeks away from that date saying, shit, I haven't done anything. I don't know where to start. I'm not ready. This date is going to blow by me. I'm going to feel crappy about myself. And I realized I couldn't let that happen. And so I started reaching out to some Barbara Sher certified life coaches to see if anyone was available. And one replied, but wasn't quite available. And another replied on a different day and said, do you want to do a discovery call right now? I said, yes. And we jumped on it. And she said, well, what do you mean by launch? I said, at this point, I'm nowhere near having a website. I just want to be able to announce publicly on Facebook to my friends and acquaintances, here's something new that I'm offering. Spread the word, try it out. This is what I'm heading toward. I'm really excited. She said, we can do that. We can make that happen. And the tools she offered me got me on track, and I was able to make the launch, make the announcement. And of course, there's more to starting a business than that. And it's definitely up and down. But that was so key to me, to know that I needed help and to reach out and not just shrivel and say, oh my God, I can't do it. I'm stuck.
So many important points you're making. I mean, it's okay to ask for help. We need to ask for help. And also, I think women think women and men, but often women think, I'm not ready. I don't have all the things in place. It has to be my coach. He made a vast generalization and said it tends to be people your age, Susanna, so that would be baby boomers, think everything has to be lined up and perfect before you launch or whatever. And he was saying, no, just do it. And he was one of the ones similar to your coach that just helped me get going. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just have to start. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, as far as the website goes, for me, I've been doing these online work huddles with another Barbara Sher certified coach, just to have some accountability. And I use those times specifically to work on this the business side of it, usually like getting website content going or this or that. And I remember saying to this woman, oh my gosh, I have to have a website. And some months ago, I don't know where to start, this or that. And she was like, get a domain, make it your name, just buy the domain, get started. And I said, okay. And as she or someone else reminded me also, sometimes half-assed is better than no-assed.
Yes, right.
Get the website up. It'll be your baby website. It'll have training wheels. There are things you'll want to fix as soon as it comes up. You might not have this or that in place, but just get it up, and then people can find you. And the more you get going, the more you can tune. And so that was really helpful to me, to just have that idea of, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the flashiest website ever. It's gonna be a little gimpy because it's my first one, even though I'm getting help with it. Just get it up. And that alone has been a long process as well. It's still in the works, but we're closing in on getting it up and running, soon. So.
And we'll talk about how to get a hold of you, and you're using your Facebook page as a way to share about what you do. And we'll have that in the show notes, and we'll also talk about it at the end. I want to make sure that I've made all the points about, one thing, it's clear in your story and in other stories of heroines' journeys that all that goes on prior to where you have the point of clarity and you start doing what you really want to be doing, all of that came before prepared you for this, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Even though there were points that were really hard, you can never wish away, because all that kind of added up to what you're able to do with what you have now, right?
Absolutely. No doubt. No doubt.
As hard as it might have been. And so, and as you said to me before, that was your foundation, and we all have that. And some of it we had a hard time going through, but again, it in the long run, it helps us be the amazing people we are today.
Absolutely. I mean, if I hadn't been struggling so hard in 2006 after my first really big significant live-in relationship had broken up, and a couple months later still struggling, and my ex-boyfriend at the time had said, I checked some horoscopes and astrology to try and figure out how and if and when to break up, and here are a couple of the horoscope writers I really appreciated, maybe they'll help you. It sounds like an odd beginning, but that's how I found the horoscopes, the person I ended up working for 10 years,
So
because
right.
they just so offered shifts in perspective, new ways of framing things, ways of thinking about healing and self-worth and creativity, and all of these things I hadn't really encountered in that form before.
Right.
So it grew out of this place of pain and being completely lost and depressed and stuck, and you just don't know like how the journey's going to go, but all these different tools come together, and I've noticed over my life there are different modalities I've tried that were good for that phase, and then eventually it's like, oh, that's it's time to kind of move on for that, or it just falls away.
So an attitude of exploring, dipping your toe into something, that's how you find out what resonates and what doesn't resonate with you. I'm wondering, before I ask you to just talk about 2023 a bit, for you to do, you were talking, and it really moved me how you were talking about doing the personal one-on-one astrological work, but then also the spiritual counseling. And how would you explain what you tap into in order to do that? Is that a hard question?
Um, yeah, it's like simple and hard at the same time. I always offer with my clients, to say out loud, or I can say it silently if they don't want to hear it, a kind of a calling in of the light to really set the stage and kind of try and start with a clear space, and to really offer that spirit does the work. I hold the space. I am the one talking. I have the tools and experience, but if energy moves or healing happens, it's partly the relationship between practitioner and client, and that it's partly, for me, in my experience, something larger allowed to sort of move through the space. So, part of what I do is try to keep up my own spiritual health, which has been challenging this year. And I've talked to a number of other people who, for whatever reason, have really struggled with staying in the habit of doing that, or in feeling like they're clearing things the way they usually clear things. I'm really curious about that with people, about why this year has been a challenging one. And I have some thoughts that are kind of pertain to my personal astrological chart, but that's not going to apply to everybody. So I'm not really sure.
Right, right. That's interesting.
I kind of offer that as if anyone else has felt like, oh, I just haven't been able to get to the yoga mat this year, or try to meditate, but I just never feel, or I just have gone months without doing anything because life, that I feel like a lot of us have been in that position, but that it does, if we keep doing a little bit of it, that diligence, I think, serves us well. There's a certain amount of like allowing ourselves the self-care of not at times, but then
Right.
allowing the imperfection to be there when we keep to our practices.
And not beating ourselves up when, for whatever reason, we don't do it, and then you think about it, I mean, the world, holy smokes, the whole world has been under such a cloud. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on. So let me then ask you, what could you say for us about putting your astrological hat on? What would you want to say to us?
Sure. So, this year, I think the thing that's at the top of my mind, especially because we're at the beginning of the year and a lot of people set intentions, if not outright resolutions and goals this time of year, is that we have two important personal planets are called retrograde right now. Mercury is retrograde in Capricorn, Mars is retrograde in Gemini, and has been for, I think, since October or something. And Mars is the planet of drive, action, motivation, ambition, as well as things like libido and lust and violence and anger and whatnot. But that's our action planet, and it's retrograde in the sign Gemini, which is a sign ruled by Mercury, a very mental sign, very, it's airy, it's very fast. And Mercury is the planet of the mind and communication and short-term travel and communication, thought processes. And it's retrograde in Capricorn, which is a sign of like foundations and building things and leadership and structure. And to have both of those planets seeming to move backward in the sky symbolizes to me that definitely take steps forward that you need and want to take, but expect that these first few weeks of the year until about, January 20th or so, at least, might be more about cleaning up old business from this last year, tying up loose ends, reviewing and restructuring and redoing things. There might be a sense of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that kind of thing. That we're still very much in kind of a review phase and repair and reclaim, and that hopefully by the time we get to late January, early February, we'll be more in a phase of really moving forward in a way that feels maybe a little less encumbered or a little less scattered or a little less just sort of flighty or less about undoing.
So will those planets be going in the right direction? They'll be going forward? Is that what, by the end of January?
Yes, I think Mars stations direct on January 12th and Mercury on January 18th. But you kind of have to give it, a few days or weeks for things to kind of shake out. And like I said, it doesn't mean don't do anything yet. It just have the awareness that it might not feel quite as clear or quite as smooth, quite as direct as you'd like. That there might be things to kind of, like I said, review and take care of and tie up. Rather than
some people might be thinking, oh, perfect time to go on a vacation. Just right. Okay. All right.
That's one thing. And looking forward as well, we have some important slower moving planets making sign changes. And Pluto is going to start entering Aquarius, which I'm not ready to say much about other than that's a big kind of cultural, global background shift that's happening. Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008, and we've seen all kinds of unstructuring of institutions and governments and systems in that time. Saturn is the one that might feel a little more tangible. Saturn is kind of our work planet, authority and responsibility and boundaries and structure, and can feel a little bit like a wet blanket at times, but that is also changing sign coming up this year. So if you think back to, so the last time it was in Pisces, which is a sign it's moving into, was I think in the mid 90s, like around 1994 to 1996. So you might consider thinking back to that time and noticing what you had to work harder at, where your challenges were, where the obstacles were, what part of your life. That might be a part of your life where you're seeing similar obstacles and challenges and having to work harder again. It is going to look different because that was 20, 25 years ago. You're not the same person now. Your challenges and obstacles and areas of work are going to look a little different, but they might happen in a similar phase of life. They might have a similar flavor. But on the bright side, we have Jupiter newly in Aries. So Jupiter is the planet of expansion and luck and benefits and buoyancy, and sometimes excess. And Aries being the sign of I am, of self, of action, of initiation. So I think there's some real, I think through May, change the sign in May. Jupiter's making a very quick trip through Aries this year. But once we get these Mercury and Mars shaking out and getting back on their track, it looks like we have a good few months this spring, late fall, early spring, to really take some steps forward and hopefully meet some support.
Okay. Well, that sounds good to me.
Fabulous.
I'm sorry, did I cut you short? Were you going to say anything more?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so here's the time I want to say to the people who want to contact you for their own reading. So here's how you reach Amanda. Best way is her email, amanda.painter46 gmail.com. And she's on Facebook. Amanda.painter.35 would be her facebook.com page. So yeah, I've made an appointment to do the spiritual work with you, but I think I have to do a horoscope astrology one with you. But Amanda, thinking about your heroine's journey and what you shared with us, which it's again such a great story. And I just wanted to sort of highlight when you talked to us about when you were incubating, keeping it close. And it's when we were talking about the threshold guardians, and that's such a good idea. I mean, there are some spiritual teachers who say, don't tell anybody when you've sort of hit on something, just because you invite in all well-meaning people want to help you and caution you, but it can throw you off. So, but all that said, what do you want to tell people listening? What would be your, if they don't listen or remember anything of what they've heard, please remember this thing that I've shared with you. What would it be?
Yeah. I think that it can take time to understand that we're ready for the next step, and that sometimes we have to take a next step before we think we're ready.
Right, right. And it might be that step, like kind of off the cliff, that clarifies enough for you to take the next step. And until you take the step, you can't see your way. Wow.
I think also one thing that occurs to me that I think I might have mentioned in our earlier conversation was that I also went through a phase of kind of having exciting new opportunities and taking them in realms of my life that on the surface don't directly pertain to what I'm doing right now professionally, but that phase of taking those opportunities, of setting goals and meeting them and discovering new capacities within myself to do that, really set a foundation for taking these steps. Even though they're in different realms of my life, the lessons were the same and fed each other, and absolutely provided the support and the ability to say, oh, right, I never thought of myself as ambitious, but when I'm excited enough about doing X, if it's a goal worthy of my energy and time, I will do the work. All those times I didn't come up with new audition monologues, it wasn't simply that, oh, I'm a lazy actor. It was partly that I didn't see opportunities that were high enough stakes for me to want to really marshal my forces and go for it. I'm someone who tends to take a pretty low key approach to life in a lot of ways, but I think when it comes especially to artistic creation, theater or photography, I do tend to set high standards for myself, and I don't always meet them, but I like doing good work and understanding that it's not always going to be perfect. Live theater is never perfect. There's always something that goes wrong because you're doing it live. But to dive into work or a goal that really is worth working for is the thing that made me want to put in the work. It wasn't just because I was supposed to or I have to. And like I said, allowing that sense of accomplishment to inform me in ways that weren't, oh, now I have to be a professional actor, I have to get into regional theater, I have to go to New York. It was about taking the lessons and allowing them to feed the rest of my life in the ways that they could and needed to.
That is so interesting, because it's encouraging then to explore and to go and try it. And you might not even end up there, but it will help you become a fuller human being and discover things about yourself that you wouldn't without trying this. So yeah, and also what goes in there is there's so many people that have a hard time trying something new and knowing that they're going to not look as good as the people who've been doing it forever, so they don't keep going or try it. And yeah, leaving your comfort zone is not easy.
That's tricky. I certainly, with starting doing astrology, I had to come to grips with the fact that I'm not initially going to be able to set a rate that that maybe reflects all the time and effort I'm putting in, because I don't have the systems in place yet to be efficient with my prep. And that takes time to get efficient enough to have that even out with the rate that I'm setting.
Hmm.
That was a good reminder to keep putting in the work, and not to get frustrated with, this person doesn't know that I just did 3 or 4 hours of prep on their chart because they wanted to know this and that, and I need to do this and this, and then they paid me the bottom of my sliding scale. You know what? I have to set my sliding scale where I'm comfortable. I have to be honest about that, and then I have to remind myself that I'm still learning how to be efficient with astrology in this way. Especially someone who's come to it very organically and who was used to writing about it. Learning how to just pick out the most salient points for a consultation with a person is also really similar to doing it for writing, but it happens in a different way. And it's easier, I think, in a consultation situation to get caught up in, I have to prepare to know everything about their chart because they're going to ask me, and then realize that the conversation is going to dictate where the focus is, and that all these other things I see might be interesting, but they might not be helpful to the person what they actually want out of the session.
Wow.
So to keep a sense of play, as you mentioned, exploring, trying different things. I think one of the things along my journey that was really, really helpful was an intensive 2 or 3 day workshop. It was theater focused, but it was about creative ownership in your theater making and about high stakes play. And there's a lot about that workshop that really helped reinforce the idea that play can be serious, in the sense that, the more you put in, the more you get out. The sense of, I think that was the first time someone recognized me as a leader and named it, because I never really thought of myself as a leader. I was always someone kind of filled in the background and did what needed to be done. So things like that, I think, can play enormous roles in our development in ways that we don't even realize are going to impact, years down the line. To have those experiences that allow us to really kind of like let go of like the adult I have to work, and really explore fun that isn't just mindless entertainment, that is really about engaging ourselves to be very deeply in tune with what we're doing, to connect deeply with others, to work in a way that is joyful and exhausting and exciting, and maybe has no tangible end product, but which allows us to see ourselves in new ways, and flex in internal muscles that we don't always flex in our day-to-day.
And we're very much making ourselves vulnerable in doing that. And all that's been written about the benefits of vulnerability. So, yeah. So I do have one more question.
Okay.
That everybody's thinking, so what the heck sign is Amanda?
Oh. So I'm a Taurus with my rising sign is Cancer, and my moon is in Sagittarius.
And so immediately some people with rudimentary understanding would say, oh, because my daughter's a Taurus, my mother was a Taurus. And I would immediately say, okay, stubborn, have a hard time leaving a situation, want to hold on to things. But then I know Sagittarius plays, and so I shouldn't even try to say anything about you.
It's tricky. I learned early on in my work for the website, and having conversations with customers and whatnot, that it can be wise to be careful about what you offer about your astrology to people you don't know, because everybody wants to come in with their interpretations and their judgments.
Right.
And if you're in a really vulnerable place, that can really kind of throw you back a little bit. If you're in a strong place of knowing yourself, you can say, yeah, but that's not the whole story, and I know this and this and this about myself. Like I remember someone saying about the choice, said, oh, you're never going anywhere. And I thought, what the hell is she to tell me that? Now, I did just stay in an apartment for 16 years, but I also recently left that apartment.
Right.
We are capable of change, but we do it better when it is, or when it feels like it's our choice and our idea, and when we're changing as a result of, I think, our creative needs, needing different support or different environment or different outlet. yeah, the tendency to stay put is a real one.
Well, Amanda, thank you so very much for doing this with me and talking with us and sharing your wisdom and your journey. I just have really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate having an opportunity to talk about this and to talk with you finally in person a couple of times. It's been a delight. So thank you.
Right. We have known each other online, but this is, well, we're still online, but this is even deeper than we've gone before. And so again, everybody, please get a hold of Amanda. I'll put this in the show notes so that you can see it. Her website, we know, is in the works. And
I'll just mention that I do try to write semi-regular astrology weather reports and post on my Facebook page, and those are public. So if people want to check that out, you're welcome to follow me. If you'd rather not do a friend request, I tend to try to friend people that I'm actually friends with, because I don't get overwhelmed with having 1,200 Facebook friends. That's just not my style. But I'm more than happy to have people follow my post if they'd like to check out my public Facebook posts.
Yeah, and to remind people that that's how I found you, I think, because I just loved the writing. It was just, Amanda's a good writer. She writes so well about what's happening. So I encourage you to do that and follow her. And I'm thanking you for being here and listening. Hopefully you'll keep doing it. There are more heroines coming up and actually a hero is coming up in the next couple sessions. So thank you for joining the both of us today, and have a wonderful star-filled, happy day. Thank you.
You've been listening to the podcast for Real Life Heroines with Susanna Liller. Thank you for joining us. If you would like to connect with Susanna outside of the show, please do. You can email susanna@susannaliller.com and visit the website at susannaliller.com. Let's get social. Instagram @Susanna Liller, Facebook Susanna Liller, author, speaker, and coach. Don't forget to subscribe to the show for easy access to our next episode. And a like and review would be very helpful. Until next time, remember to follow your inner guidance to grow and evolve.